You know, our family's relation with Rolex started in 1952. When my father was part of the member of the Swiss Everest expedition in 1952, they had made two attempts, one in the spring and one in the fall. And in the spring, he had gone with his climbing partner, Raymond Lambert, and they had got almost about 400 meters from the summit and had to turn back. In 1953, when he went back up with the British expedition, he had the same watch that he took as luck, for his luck, and he basically went to the top with that watch. And ever since then, you know, our family has been associated with Rolex, and Peter's family too. And I remember one of the important things my father told me, you know, was that when you're climbing high on mountains, you always keep an eye on time, you know. And time, the reason to keep an eye on time was because the higher you go, there's almost 1/3 of the oxygen high up there at about 8,000 feet, 8,000 meters. And the important thing he said was you always look at your watch every 2 minutes, 2 minutes. Just keep looking at your watch to make sure that you have, you know, the time to make sure that you're still in your senses. Because with the lack of oxygen up there, you get hypoxic. You know, you start to hallucinate. You start to see things, and that's when people start to make mistakes. And that's one of the most important lessons I learned on the climb, was to look at your watch all the time. I mean, I liked my watch. I like to look at it, but at the time, you were thinking more about, you know, life or death situations. And that was how the relationship between Rolex and our family started. And just some of the few clips of the expeditions during my father and Hillary's time, and the relationship that the two of them had continued over, you know, until the day both of them passed away. And today we continue to maintain that relationship with the Hillary family. As you can see, Peter and me, we're here together. And we've done a lot of exploring, a lot of lectures together, a lot of expeditions and treks. We're planning now in the near future. And we hope to continue, and hope that continues to grow even further. In 1996, when I went up, I had the Explorer watch, which was actually given to me by my father. And later on, I found out that the watch actually belonged to Heinrich Harrer, the famous explorer from the 30s. And he had presented that watch to my father in the mid-70s. And then my father had given that to me as when I was just growing up, as a gift to me. And I was proud, as Harrer right over there, at, visiting our parents in Darjeeling. And I felt proud to be wearing that watch and getting it, you know, all the way to the top of the world. And I just want to ask Peter what his relationship was with Rolex. If you can tell us a little bit.
Well, I guess our relationship with Rolex also started with Mount Everest. In fact, also in 1952, when Dad was on an expedition to Cho Oyu. And I've just got a few shots I wanted to show you. If you just roll these through. There's my father in his later years. This is Tenzing and he getting ready for that final ascent. As you can see, wristwatches to the fore, because they've really got to time the use of oxygen, the time of day. It's critical that you are in the right place at the right time. This is up at about 8,500 meters on Mount Everest. You can see the conditions are pretty good. And this is before the other members of the team turned around and went down, leaving it to Dad and Tenzing to have a go at the top. And this is the famous photo that he took of Tenzing Norgay on the summit of Mount Everest. And these are the watches that Rolex provided to the British expedition, and they were the precursors to what became the Explorer series. And that's the one, and actually that's the registration when my father sent it from where he was working in New Zealand over to Switzerland, and it now resides in the Bayer Watch Museum in Zurich. And there's a close-up of that wonderful watch. There's certainly been a number of watches used in all sorts of different situations. My father was also involved in leading one of the expeditionary parties in Antarctica to the South Pole, and using converted Massey Ferguson farm tractors, they were the third people to reach the South Pole overland after Amundsen, the great Norwegian skier, and Captain Robert Scott from the UK. And of course he had one of his old Rolexes on this expedition. They've just arrived at the pole, and it's a very battered old watch, but a much loved and well-used one. And you can see it there with the nylon strap with some of the others. The one on the top is one, in fact, I have on my wrist right now. It was given to my father for the Ocean to Sky jet boat expedition, and Dad then gave it to me, and I used it in a lot of my early mountaineering trips, and we still use it to this day. That was an IWC that was presented to Dad around the time of the Antarctic expedition. And then, as I mentioned, the Ocean to Sky jet boat expedition, one of the most marvelous trips of the lot. We took jet boats from the Bay of Bengal right across the whole of India and then up into the Himalayas, and these were the watches we used for timing everything on that particular expedition. A couple of years later, you may recognize that man on the right. You may wonder what happened to the fellow on the left. I don't have quite as much hair anymore. But Neil Armstrong, Dad and I, Stephen Fawcett, the great American balloon pilot, and I, with Neil Armstrong, had a wonderful adventure flying to the North Pole, landing on the floating sea ice. And there we are with the traditional barber's pole. Now, I assure you that the barber's pole does not reside there. We brought it with us. So there we were, and then here we are again back in the Himalayas, where Dad and I, and Ming Masering, who was one of Dad's greatest helpers up there, working on some of the schools and hospitals. There were over 42 schools and hospitals that Dad built up in the Mount Everest area of Nepal in the Himalayas, and you can see his trusty Explorer 1 that he wore for about 20 years in the latter part of his life. And that was a Rolex quartz that he used quite a bit. And then you just saw before there was a gold wristwatch that Rolex gave him for the 50th anniversary of the first ascent of Mount Everest. Now, Dad didn't particularly like ostentatious things, but what he liked about Rolexes is that they really were the real thing. You know, they told the time, they were reliable, and, you know, everyone likes the real thing, and that's part of what attracted him to that. And I guess I've been a bit smitten with it as well, going to places like this in the Eastern Karakoram of India, with my look-alike Ed Hillary hat on some of the expeditions, and we've built up a little collection of watches that we've used in some of these interesting places. This white-faced Explorer 2 has literally come to the summits of many of my expeditions, including all of the 7 summits, the highest mountain on each continent. Mount Everest, of course, Mount Vincent in Antarctica, and all the others. This was my 7 summits chronometer, and it's engraved on the back, as you see there. And to this day, I've just got back from Antarctica, and I'm actually sunbathing, if you can imagine that, in about minus 10 degrees, down there on the Antarctic Peninsula a few months ago, and looking out across the bay, and of course on that left wrist is the old white-faced 7 Summits Rolex Explorer 2. And so really that's, I guess, a little look at our interest in these watches, and it's one of the things that's led us to collaborate with Philip Stahl and to produce the Hillary Tenzing edition watches and this amazing 1953 Everest lookalike crate with all of the items inside. And it's been an amazing experience. So thank you very much.
Thank you.